Welcome guys to another episode of Identity Server 7 release. So today we are going to look into Private Key JWT authentication using Identity Server 7. So why Private Key JWT authentication is important? So let me quickly show you guys. So I'm in the Identity Server console. Let me create a new application. So it's going to be a standard based application. So I'm going to name this FAPI compliant. So what FAPI is basically, it's a highly secure auth profile which is providing financial grade API security to your client application. So I'm going to make it FAPI compliant and I'm going to hit create. So when your application is FAPI compliant, when you go to client authentication, so it only allows two client authentication methods basically. So it's Private Key JWT and Mutual TLS. So for Mutual TLS, we will bring a separate video, but for today, let's focus on Private Key JWT. So what is Private Key JWT authentication? So before jumping into that, let's look at the two types of clients specified by the OAuth2 specification. So we have the confidential client and the public client. So according to the auth2 specification, so I took this screenshot from the auth2 specs itself. The confidential clients are the ones who are able to maintain their confidentiality, and the public clients are incapable of that. So for an example, a mobile application. So basically it's referring to this particular example, a client executing on a device used by the resource owner. So this is basically explaining the mobile application scenario. So another example for a public client is like a single page application. Yeah. So if your client is confidential client, it is mandatory for you to authenticate with the authorization server using the client credentials. So why it's important? Because you need to make sure this client application is not a malicious client, and authorization server needs to validate that. So that is done using the client credentials. So there are multiple ways doing this. So the two main types are using a shared secret or a private key. So using the shared secret, the authorization server is going to issue the secret or the password on behalf of the client. Then that is going to be stored on the server and the client. So there are three types doing this shared secret client authentication method. So the first one is the client secret basic. So basically we are going to take the client ID and the secret and send it in the authorization header with base 64 encoded. Then we have the client secret post. So in here we are going to send the client ID and secret in the request body of the request. And in client secret JWT, so what we are going to do is we are basically going to prepare a JSON payload according to the OpenID specification, like adding the claims and other parameters. Then we are going to add a signature using the client secret. Then the authorization server is going to validate the signature using the client secret. And then the other mechanism is private key. The major difference here is the client is going to generate a key pair, a private key and a public key, then which is then securely stored, and then the client uses this private key to authenticate itself by signing an assertion, a JWT. So there are two ways doing this. We have the private key JWT and the TLS client auth. So today we are going to look into private key JWT. So in private key JWT, so as I said, so we generate a key pair on the client application side. So we have a key pair here. So we have the private key and the public key. So after we have this key pair, we are going to share this public key with the authorization server. Then after we done the setup, then we can prepare our data for our token endpoint, a JSON payload according to the OpenID specification. We will look into this in the demo as well. Then we are going to add a signature using the private key. So after that, we are going to send the token, call the token endpoint, and we're going to send this data. Then the authorization server can validate this data using the public key. Then after the verification is done, if everything is good, then the authorization server will send back the token response. So that is the private key authentication flow. And now let's jump into the demo. So we are back in the identity server console now. Let's create a standard based application. I'm going to name this demo JWT. I'm going to hit create. Alright, so our client application is created, and when you go to client authentication, so we see all these methods. From here we're going to select private key JWT, and as per the sign-in algorithm, I'm going to select PS256. Hit update. Alright, so our application is ready. Let's copy this client ID. Now we need to generate public key and private key certificates for this application. So let's do that now. Alright, so I'm inside this demo JWT folder, so nothing is inside of this. Now we need to first create an client key store. So I'm gonna paste the client ID here first, and let's run this command first. And so we're gonna name this key store demo JWT, and let's copy our client ID and put it as the alias. Okay, so we need to provide a password. This you can put anything you like, and then we need to provide some information, first name and organizational unit. I'm gonna just put sales, and organization name I'm gonna put 1IAM, city is Colombo and Western Province. Alright, so these are the information that we need to provide in order to generate the key store. I'm gonna hit yes, and yeah, so it has created our key store now. So you can see we have demo JWT JKs. Now we need to convert this key store to PKCS 12 format. So let's do that as well. So this one I'm gonna name demo JWT, and the JK's format name is demo JWT as well. Alright, so we need to provide the passwords. And the source password as well. Alright, so now we have our PKCS 12 format key store as well. So from this, now we need to export out the public key and the private key certificates. So let's do that now. So I'm going to run these OpenSSL commands in order to do that. So yeah, so let's name this public key out, and this one demo JWT. Enter the password, and now we have a public key out. Then we need to export out the private key as well. So I'm gonna name this private key out, and demo JWT. Enter the password again. Alright, now we are all set. So we have our private key and public key out. Now what we need to do is we need to import this public key to our client application. So let's do that now. So if you go down here, you see we can provide a certificate. So click on it and let's upload our certificate now. So I'm inside the demo JWT folder and let's import the public key to our authorization server and hit update. Alright, so now we are all set from the identity server console end, and now we need to generate a JWT token to hit the token endpoint. So I'm in this JWT.io website. So make sure you have selected the PS256 algorithm, and then we need to provide this payload data. So we need to provide the issuer, subject, expiry, issued at time, and a unique ID for this token, and the audience. So it's going to be the token endpoint. So let's provide this information. So for our issuer and subject, we need to provide the client ID. So let me copy it from here and let's put the client ID. So the expiry time and issued that time, I'm gonna go to this epoch converter. Let's copy this current time. So this will be our issued at time, and for the expiry I'm gonna just add 1 hour here and get the epoch time. So let's add the expiry. So within 1 hour this token will be expired from the time right now. So let's so then we need to provide the public key and the private key as the signature. So let's do that as well. So let me let's take the public key first. You need to copy from the begin certificate and end certificate. So let's paste the information here, and let's take the public key information as well. And let's copy the information, paste it in here. Alright, so now we have generated our token. So let's use this token to call the token endpoint now. So we are going to use Postman to initiate the token request. For the grant type, we are going to use client credentials, and for the client assertion type, we are going to use JWT bearer. And for the client assertion, let's paste the JSON Web Token that we generated, and yep, so we are all set. And if you go to authorization, we are not using any authentication mechanism. The authorization is going to happen through this JWT assertion itself. So that's the beauty of this. And let's hit send. Alright, so we are receiving an access token. So our authorization server has validated this token using the public key that we provided to our client, and it has sent back an access token for us to use. Alright, so this is cool. Let's jump into the summary of this video. So in this video we looked into why Private Key JWT is important if you want to implement financial grade API security to your client application. Then Private Key JWT plays a crucial part in it. And we saw how to generate private and public keys for a client application, and then how to import the public key to the WSO2 identity server, and then how to generate and JWT assertion. So we use the JWT.io website to do that, and then the token request from the client credential grant type using the JWT assertion. So that's it for this video, and thank you for watching.